My love for designing cities started at the age of 15. My friend's father showed me pictures of beautiful Calatrava bridges, the ones with white arches that look like whale skeletons or huge eyes. Civil engineering, that was the study I would pursue. Building big stadiums, infrastructure, waterways, all the things I wanted to design that would have a great impact on how we would live, transport ourselves, and protect ourselves from natural disasters. With the rise of technology and the speed and innovation it grants, I decided to focus on designing smart cities. I started my first job at a big tech company, sprinting up the corporate ladder as a 20-something-year-old, finding my way just after moving to the big city of Amsterdam. 3 years later, I burned out. Being the first generation in my family to attend university in a society that considers millennials, like me, lazy and spoiled, I felt highly pressured to succeed. Additionally, I was raised with the notion that status, money, and security are of great importance. Meanwhile, internet quotes tell me to not to worry, be happy, and do what I love. My expectations of myself were sky high. Failure was not an option. Yes, there were personal reasons for my burnout, but was this solely my own fault? I knew that my city life did not encourage me to stay mentally healthy either. So I wondered, are the environments we live in actually designed to benefit our needs to lead a healthy, happy, and fulfilling life? That was
Good evening and a very warm welcome from Pakhuis de Zwijger. My name is Jurgen Chonnafong and I will be your moderator tonight. And tonight we will have the final episode of this year, of the second year of Designing Cities for All. And of course, like everybody knows, Designing Cities for All is a two-year-long research project where we dive into designing products, places and systems for all. Thank you so much, Wing Yang Man, for sharing a teaser of your essay. We will talk about that essay later in the program as well. Can we give her a small hand, please? It's good to know that tonight has got a festive touch because we're going to look back at the past 2 years. What have we been doing? What were the successes? What were the takeouts that we can learn from as well? Because Designing Cities for All has been continuing for 2 years now. And later on in the evening, we will also present 2 publications to end this and celebrate this second year. And the titles of the publications are More Perspectives on Designing Cities for All and Design Principles. You can see a teaser of Design Principles here. If you would like to participate in the evening by posing questions, that is possible, especially for the people here. Please raise your hand, then somebody with a microphone will come to you. If you're at home and you would like to be involved in this conversation, that is also possible. Please go to www.menti.com. And if you add the following code, 21863692, then you can pose your questions online. And if you mention who the question is aimed for, I will make sure that the right question will go to the right person. So again, the code is 21863692 at menti.com. Well, we'll talk with a lot of interesting people. We'll talk about the essays that they've been written. But first, I would like to have a warm hand for Romy Heijmans, who's been the project lead of Designing Cities for All. Please give her a warm hand. Romy, a warm welcome to you.
Thank you.
You didn't start as a project lead because that initially was Dimphy Brown. And
yeah.
Dimphy unfortunately couldn't join us tonight
No,
because
she's sick.
She's ill,
Yeah.
unfortunately. But you took over with a lot of joy, I reckon. What was your idea when you started out with this program? Is there anything that you had in mind that you wanted to achieve while working on Designing Cities for All?
Well, it's funny because I started working here at Pakhuis de Zwijger in February of this year. And then 2 months later as a social city program maker. And then 2 months later, the Designing Cities for All function became available. And they asked me if I wanted to do it. And first I thought, oh, I don't know if I can do that because I don't really have a background in design. I did some projects where we did design thinking, but I actually have a background in journalism. Focusing a lot on inclusion and diversity and similar topics. But so I was a little bit insecure about it at first, thinking, is this for me? And then I remember going to some of the programs to kind of get into it. And the first series that I saw was the Together We Design series, made by my dear colleagues, Jonah and Faiza. And it was about participatory design and co-design. And it was so interesting because all of these topics that I've been discussing in journalism, all of this focus on inclusion and trying to incorporate everyone or invite everyone at the table, that was the same topic there, just with sometimes the angle of architecture. And not even all the time, because we also did series on journalism. We did series on climate and environmental justice. You know, it was super educational to learn about all of these different perspectives. So that was really, exciting.
And if you look back on the programs you participated in, what's the most memorable episode or the most memorable moment?
I don't like to pick favorites.
Well, you have to.
Well, one thing I remember is, so like I said, the Together We Design series, which I just started at Designing Cities for All. It was really enlightening for me because it taught me so much about how to think about inclusion. And also one of the criticisms on the word inclusion, that is actually quite exclusionary, right? That's something that I think about almost every week. That's something that we took away from the One World triptych or the One World series about journalism, about redesigning journalism, because to include someone, you need power, right? So you're the one including. There's still a hierarchy there.
Yeah. And to include someone and to make programs that are inclusive of people, you also exclude. So
exactly.
What is your stance of, being inclusive by excluding people? That contradiction. How do you position yourself towards that?
I think it's something that you really have to keep in mind all the time. It's a bias, and sometimes someone gave me a really good example a while ago on how sometimes it's not possible to be completely inclusive, and you also have to be aware of that. You can't be arrogant and think, I can do this for everyone, it's me, I can do this. Her example was, gender neutral toilets, right? They're super inclusive, right? She said, it's like, yeah, of course, everyone can go there, yeah. And she said, no, actually, for women with hijabs, it's not inclusive at all, because they want to fix their hijab sometimes in the toilet, and if a man can walk in, they can't do that. So I think one of the most important values when you're thinking about inclusion is to be very self-reflective and aware of your position and your privilege.
Right. We will talk about the publications later, but this one, the bundle of essays.
Yeah.
Can you tell me a little bit more about the background and why this was being developed?
Yeah. So when I wasn't here yet, when Dimfy was still doing the program, we did a first essay book in 2021, and we wanted to do a new one because we had so many amazing speakers from all different domains at DCFA. So we wanted to invite a lot of them to write a piece from their perspective on designing cities for all, which we did. And we worked through. We invited 16 people to write an essay for us, and this was the outcome. They're so different, all of the stories. It really is. It really shows how design is a part of everything, because there's literally a story about eels in there by Darko Lagunas, about the fish, eels, and how you should also look at nature, or actually anything beyond the human, as he calls it, when designing for all, and that's something that we tend to forget. So that's such a unique perspective, which really, it gives you a lot of new things to think about.
And are there some common threads within the essays? Are there recurring themes that we can see?
Yeah, in this one we talk, so nature inclusion, or actually I learned that the word nature inclusion is not, again, the most inclusive way of putting it, because then it still separates human and nature, except we're part of nature. So interbeing, I heard, is a good way to describe that. That's something that comes back. In the essay that Dafina Misijan wrote, she's an environmental legal scholar, and she talks about rights of nature. Which is really interesting. But then another one is decolonization. We did a triptych on this as well this season, and it's something that almost every one of the essays touches upon. Yeah.
What should people expect while reading those essays? Because, like you said, there are many different perspectives that are being included here. Why should you, if you would sell this book to me, what would that be? What would your tactic be?
Pitch?
Yeah.
If you want to step out of your own perspective and learn about your blind spots, then read this, because so many different people from so many different backgrounds and disciplines and walks of life have written this.
Yeah. Let's have more examples, because we talked a little bit about how gender-neutral toilets are not really exclusive in the sense of people with a hijab. Have you got more of those moments that you would like to share with us?
The learning moments. Oh God, there's so many. Well, one thing that really made clear for me how all of these intersections are relevant when designing is the realization. One of the figures that someone in a problem or a program that we did about complex inequality, one of the speakers mentioned that people from areas with a lower socioeconomic status actually live a lot less long than people from rich neighborhoods. So 6 to 15 years shorter, actually, which is a lot. And it's also in terms of it's about their quality of life all over, right? It's not a great life and then 6 years less. No, it's like in general, taking bits and pieces of quality of life. And mostly those socioeconomically lower income areas are also areas in which a lot of communities of people of color live. So, and then the richer neighborhoods are the white neighborhoods generally. So there's a really big racist system that's behind that as well. So it really shows how, and air pollution is the reason often, or one of the big reasons. So it shows how the design of these systems, but also the spatial design is so important.
But redesigning systems, dysfunctional systems, those are themes that, appeared frequently during the programs. Is it realistic to redesign a system, especially if money is involved? Can we redesign systems, and do you believe in that?
I do believe in that. I hear people talking about it every week.
But does it actually happen? Because talk is cheap in that sense.
Well, the people that are here at the table are generally designers who do change that narrative. So yeah, definitely.
From your mouth to God's ears.
Yes.
Let's say. We also have the Designing Cities for All design principles.
Yeah.
In 2 sentences, what is this exactly?
This is all of the things that we learned in the last 2 years condensed into 8 principles. And the reason that it's quite short is because we wanted to make it available to a lot of people. So we're also going to give this out to students. We're going to give it to you tonight, because then they can take it into their practice of designing. We might have missed some things. We took into account so many lessons we learned. So many people shone their light on it as well. So we didn't do it ourselves completely. And it's also a living document. So we really want people to help us rethink all of these. They're all subject to reevaluation all the time. The last one is about learning and unlearning. And that's something that is at the basis of Designing for All.
Right. So although it's set in print, it's not set in stone.
It's not set in stone, no.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Romy. Please give her a warm hand.
Thanks.
The past week, the Designing Cities for All communication team has been working on a new DCFA trailer, which captures the highlights of the past 2 years. Let's have a look on how that looks. Let's see the trailer.
A very warm welcome to you all. Welcome to Designing Cities for All.
The 2-year activity program of Pakhuis de Zwijger,
in which we take a deep dive into designing products,
places and systems for all.
At every level, we can see certain communities being marginalized, being taken advantage of, and it's all part of the design.
When you're neurodiverse, you're in a world that isn't designed for you.
We're not the only species on the planet. The city needs to be also a city for the other species.
And we need to do something because the old structures in which we worked don't work.
Things won't change just if we just let things happen.
Instead of saying, what can we do to mitigate the impacts? We need to start asking ourselves, what is causing that?
Design is political, that we need to design processes, that we are all different, but there are things that unite us.
These are the things that need to be on the table, that need to be recovered in order to redesign the society.
Everything around us was once designed and can therefore be redesigned.
How do we teach design in a way where students can be really critical of the systems of power that have informed and dominated design?
Inclusion happens by design or not at all.
I think it's always some kind of a co-creation process, and you have to make very little steps and then figure out together what works and what doesn't.
It takes as much time to do something good as it takes time to do something bad.
All design tells a story.
But there's also a bit of a need to not just write ourselves into the past, but also kind of write ourselves into the future.
I invite you so much to join my path of liberation, and I'm hopefully being welcomed by your path of liberation.
We have to heal collectively. We have to help each other understand some of these constructs that actually divide us.
Not fitting in was a blessing, or I would have turned out just like you.
Yeah, that was nice looking back to that. Let's have a warm hand for the communication team. Like I said, this bundle is chock full of people that have been written essays as well, and some of the people are joining me here at the table. I would like to introduce, we already saw you, Wing Yang Man, and you're the host of It's All Mental podcast, and you're a founder of the 3210 School of Millennials. A warm welcome to you.
Thank you.
You are joined by Roberto Rocco, who is Associate Professor of Spatial Planning and Strategy, Department of Urbanism at the TU Delft. A warm welcome to you as well.
Thank you.
On my left-hand side for the viewers, on your right hand, is Anna Noyens. You're a social designer, a founder and creative director of Ink Social Design Studio. A warm welcome to you. Shai Raviv, you're the co-founder of the Voorkamer and curator of the Embassy of Inclusive Society. Welcome.
Thank you.
And if all connections work well, yes, I see Radha appear on the screen already. A warm welcome to Radha de Souza, and the Professor of International Law Development and Conflict Studies at the University of Westminster, a lawyer, a social justice activist, and a writer. A warm welcome to you as well. We will talk about perspectives of designing cities for all, and it's a question I would like to open up with. And what are the main takeaways? Because you've all joined in the programs in the past as well. What are the main takeaways or memorable moments or insights that you had? Can I start with you?
Wow. I'm learning a lot through this program, I have to say, and a lot of the conversations that we are having here are really central to my teaching afterwards. My kind of message into this program was the notion of justice as something underscoring sustainability. So that's something that I really like to highlight, the idea that sustainability is only possible if we have social sustainability. And if we have, in order to have social sustainability, we need justice so that people can buy into the sustainability.
Right. And justice is connected to freedom as well?
Yes.
But freedom is not a neutral word. It's being interpreted and used in different ways and forms as well. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, that's what I try to explain in my essay, actually, is that we are, our house is on fire, like Greta Thunberg would say, right? And the ship has sailed for climate change. We will need to go into deep adaptation now to a new reality. And that new reality will demand that we make sacrifices, that we choose, that we leave things behind. and those things need to be negotiated. So it is important that we understand that that's a collective endeavor. We have to do it collectively. But then, of course, there are issues of individual freedom that we need to discuss as well. And I think we are sold an idea of individual freedom that is really, in my view, wrong.
What is the idea that we've been sold?
Well, that, you know, like in the pandemic, that people really rebelled against the vaccine and the medical advice. And I think, as I said, it's a collective endeavor. We have to do it all together, or we can't do it. And I think we've been sold this idea that being free is being able to do whatever you want, whenever you want. But actually, there is another conception of freedom that is sustainable freedom, the freedom to be able to continue to do the things you do today and to enable the next generations to do the same thing.
That's boring freedom.
Well, maybe it's boring.
I'm here to provoke, right?
I know, it's your job. Maybe it's no, I don't think it's boring at all, actually. I think it's really wonderful to collaborate and to partner up with people on collective endeavors. And I think it's boring to be alone. That's boring. So when you are collaborating and talking to people, that's fun, I think. And I think we need to do that. We need to work all together to face these issues.
Right. Thank you so much. Radha, what's the main takeaway that you had?
My main takeaway was, I mean, the bit that I enjoyed the most was actually looking and reflecting on multiple perspectives from people who are fellow travelers, people who are walking the same road, trying to ask the same questions about justice, about freedom, trying to find answers. What happens generally with critique and with campaigns and things, we are so focused on, what the other side, what the capitalists and imperialists and racists are saying, that we often forget that there are differences amongst ourselves, but those are within the camp of friendship and solidarity. And that gives a completely different kind of joy in working together and in kind of reflecting on those differences. Where are people coming from? And what is the underlying, basis for that? So it actually takes, at least for me, helps me to go forward in my own thinking. And I found that the most enjoyable. And of course, the solidarity and friendship of people.
Why are we so focused on the conflict of differences instead of the celebration of differences?
I think that differences are important because we are human. And as human, we have to find collective solutions. And to think that everybody is going to think the same is not going to take us further. We are not some programmed machines.
But it's more easy in life to surround yourself with people that think the same. The whole social media system is based on creating your own bubble, having people in your algorithm that feels the same things, and life is enjoyable and good in that way. Or is it?
But that is why things don't move forward. That is why it affects people's creativity. It affects creative solutions to our problems. It affects building solidarities. I'm not sure those Facebook friends have any sense of friendship. If that's what people think is friendship, then it's a very sad story about our times.
But that's a very old-fashioned take on life. Again, I'm here to provoke, right?
Yeah, that is true. Absolutely true. And I have no hesitation in, defending something that is, in my view, correct, just because it happens to be old. Maybe some old things are really valuable. And maybe there are certain kind of truths and insights which we have inherited over generations, which is tried and tested. But in this case, coming to your question on Facebook, I mean, and social media and algorithm-driven relationships, I think that it misses a very fundamental reality about human life, that human beings are social beings. We keep on saying, we just heard just minutes ago, that humans are also part of nature, etc. We are part of nature. We are herd animals. Without a herd, we will be destroyed. It's the most self-destructive thing that can happen. So that is why certain truths have continued over many generations. I have no problems. I don't have an impulse to be always modern and at the top of things. Some old things are worthwhile keeping and following. That's what I would say.
Thank you so much for
now. I know it was a provocative question, but I'm returning the provocation.
And that was a brilliant response, so thank you so much for that. Wing-Yan, you plead that the backyards have to turn into schoolyards. What do you mean by that?
Well, I think, as we all understand right now, I am millennial, my school for millennials, but as you can see right now, technology is taking over, or at least it's rapidly changing. Everything is changing. You see that, but there are problems we need to solve right now. We don't have the time. And I think what I see also, because I was in addition with the mental health, a lot of things we have not learned at school. And I think it just simple stuff that have always been in life could be some grief, for example. I have not learned how to grieve at school, or basic things on how to take care of my mental health. Those things, I would say, we all have a story to tell, and we all can teach something. We all have experiences, and I wish we all open up our backyards as schoolyards to share that story, because we need to learn faster, and I think we need to keep on learning. So when you're 18 or when you're done studying, it doesn't stop there.
But what I do wonder when I hear you, and I do agree, we weren't being taught how to grieve as a younger generation. But if I hear Radha, that's a thing that has been passed on for generations. Why is there a disconnect with millennials now?
I don't think there's a disconnect with the millennials.
Well, but if you say we haven't been taught. I think
probably in life. I think it's not only our generation, and it's not only the younger or the older generation. I think there are certain elements in life that maybe through time you learn things. There's more time also for each other to have a conversation, to learn about each other. But I would say nowadays, well, Radha's right. We have friends online. How deep is your conversation with someone? If you are, I would say, if I'm at home, I'm happy I'm being alone, just having some time for myself, because we're constantly connected with whatever. Is it work? Is it WhatsApp? Is it socially? We want to have everything in life, the abundance. But
yeah, one of the questions you posed in your essay as well is, when was the last time that you were bored?
Yeah,
and that's a long time ago. But still, is the pressure on millennials bigger than there is on other generations, because the expectations society has that is being put on you by social media, and expectations that you have of yourself?
I think we come from our parents' generation. Of course, they worked hard for our future, and you can see that now we live in quite a wealthy life, at least in the western part, or at least where we're here in this country. And I would say, if you enter as a young person, I'm not sure if young persons agree with this, but if you enter a company, they would say you're spoiled. You got everything. Why are you complaining about things? I had to work a long time in my life to get there, from older generation. On the other hand, what Roberto was saying, like, there's some things that are happening that we don't agree with anymore, that it should happen, like climate change. You see already the energy crisis, not even a generational thing, it's happening now. So I think as a young person, you feel the need to do something for yourself, something that has not been given to you. So you want to create that impact. And yeah, so you feel the pressure not only for, I need to succeed in the old system, where I just mentioned, like, that system is probably created by the boomers, like, I need to earn money, I need to buy a house, I need to have, I don't know, a family, children, all that stuff, but also on, I need to have a happy life. That's what we're raised on. Like, you have everything, so you should enjoy it now. Plus, we want to solve all these world problems. So I think there's a lot of pressure everywhere.
A lot, yeah.
And who's going to do it? And the older generation is going to retire soon. So
It's all up to you.
Yes, thank you.
Anna, a warm welcome to you as well. As a social designer, what is your take on designing cities for well-being, for rest, and for connection? Actually, what we heard from Wing-Jan as well.
Well, I already fell in love with the program before I was part of it. So I was really in awe of how many recognition and the like-minded people I found within the program. Before I even joined, just as a spectator. So when I was asked to join, I was actually really flattered, and it's a really cool crowd to be part of, I think, because the thing that to me felt very inclusive, or I felt very much included and seen by the realization that as someone who is making decisions and someone who is designing in the broadest sense as it is presented in this program, you are carrying a big responsibility. And I have always felt this responsibility as a maker, as a designer, and it was so nice and warm to meet other people who felt this responsibility as well, and that we could have an equal conversation about it, and we could have a critical conversation about it. And because we were we didn't have to argue that anymore, we could go very deep, and we could have very profound discussions on what is inclusivity, and really, I think, take this field and bring this discussion further. And I think that I loved being part of that.
And in your essay, you talk about good design.
Yes.
What does that entail?
Well, I think we're surrounded by a lot of bad design.
Can you give an example of bad design?
Well, where shall I start? I think there is a lot of the things that surround us are optimizing for the wrong things.
Like what?
Well, one of the things is, like, we know for a fact, for example, that people are, it contributes to your well-being if you have impromptu conversations throughout the day. Spontaneous conversations throughout the day with people that you don't know.
Yeah.
That is scientifically proven to be beneficial for your well-being. Yeah. And yet we're designing a world where more like the chances of bumping into people that you don't know, of having random conversations, are becoming smaller and smaller. And this is not one designer deliberately being behind the wheel, but we're doing this all together because apparently intuitively we think we love solitude and not being bothered and being focused on your own individuality. So I think that is the difference. But what I'm trying to point out in my essay is that good design is design that takes care of us despite what we might think or what our intuition tells us.
Who can
what
take
is good for
on
us.
that responsibility, because it's thinking against the norm of breaking systems of education as well, because people are being educated to think a certain way, and who can do that counteraction?
Well, we should do that. I think when you're designing, at least the act of designing is taking the time to reflect on decisions that you're making for other people, right? And as it is described also in the principles, design is power, but it comes with great responsibility. And I think that is the responsibility that I would like to talk about, is how are we influencing people's lives, not only on the short term, but especially on the long term, and how can we really profoundly optimize for well-being in all kinds of systems.
Yeah, thank you for now. Shai, you also wrote an essay, and there you reflect on, and your essay is called "What is in Your Backpack?" and you reflect on your role as a curator of the Embassy of Inclusive Society, and you embrace vulnerability and openness in a society. Is that possible? And well, at least, is it possible in the society that we live in now?
From my experience, it's possible. I can speak for myself. I sat on this table, I think, like 5 times in the last year and a half. And it's really, now I'm thinking back and I'm thinking, every time I sat here, I sat from a different position, wearing nearly each time a different hat. One time I sat in your chair. I was the moderator because you couldn't be here.
I know, I'm so sorry.
But for me, at first I was like, oh, who am I? Am I this? Am I that? Am I that? But actually realizing that by wearing these different hats or coming in with a different role, you come in with a different perspective. You can be the student, the researcher, the teacher, the organizer, the initiator. And that enables a sort of vulnerability, because you keep on being able to, I can understand what you feel now because I've sat in your chair like 2 months ago. So that enables a sense of vulnerability, which I think is really fruitful when designing with this great responsibility, or when working on topics such as cities for all and inclusivity.
But vulnerability in our society is connected to a certain group of people are able to be vulnerable and share that vulnerability as well.
Yeah.
The other group of people that share that vulnerability are being regarded as weak.
Yeah. No,
So
that's an
how do you
interesting-
change that perspective in order to be vulnerable even in those situations?
Yeah, that's an interesting point. I did write that there is a sense of privilege in even being able to wear different hats and navigating through that. And as a curator of the embassy, I felt like I constantly have to shift between showing my vulnerability and standing there saying like I have no idea what I'm doing, and calling for help and opening up the doubts and letting doubts be a part of the process, and also being able to convince people that I know what I'm talking about,
Exactly.
because otherwise why would they, join us?
Exactly. How do you go about it?
Yeah, trust in the process, because essentially, and I think that's probably what we see in the past 2 years, and what I feel with the work of the embassy, like. Yeah, the end result doesn't matter. I mean, it matters for, in the case of Dutch Design Week, it matters for 10 days, but after that, you recovered and you move on. But the process is what remains the most important, because in the process we learn and we evolve, and we take the most out of that. So vulnerability is, by trusting the process, I guess, enabled.
Thank you so much. Radha, because your response in the first round was so amazing, I will pose this question to you as well. And I will put it a little bit more boldly. You cannot be vulnerable in certain positions because our system is geared to see vulnerability as a weakness. So if you want to lead people into a certain direction, there's no room for vulnerability. What would your response be to that?
Well, I was thinking about it when, when I was listening to the other speaker, and that is, you see, there is a saying in English, beauty is in the eyes of the beholder. I have worked in, and vulnerability is how you see vulnerability, what values you attach to it. For example, working class women are typically considered to be, vulnerable, economically vulnerable, socially vulnerable, single mothers. But you look at them from a different light and you see how amazing they are. There is a possibility of seeing them in a completely different way if you change the meaning of vulnerability. Right. You look at, solo mom with 2 kids, struggling with 3 jobs. Look at the vitality and the energy, and how do they cope with it, and how do they manage? And in contrast, you see people who have so much comfort and so many other things in life, and they talk about vulnerability. As someone who has come from that kind of background, and as someone who has gone through some of those things, I find quite amazing how people, see vulnerability and feel vulnerability. I think a lot of it is also depends on, our spirit and our, energy and our vitality to be able to respond to those things. And that is completely a question of your values, your worldviews. I could tell you another story about myself, which will be the most vulnerable person in the world, but nobody will see me as a vulnerable person.
That's very interesting, of course, because what I understand from this is reclaiming vulnerability and changing perspectives where you see vulnerability as a strength. What would you like to add to that?
I'm saying that there is strength in those people if you look at the strength.
Yeah, changing perspective by changing perspectives. Yes. Right. Thank you so much, Radha.
I think it's important to not generalize. So in this case, I was talking about vulnerability as a designerly attitude when holding on the position, the positionality of being a designer or being a curator or being a decision maker, a leader that takes responsibility and makes decisions for others. And within that role and that position, vulnerability seems to me as a key attitude in order to take in account the position that you bring to the table. Yeah. And then in another context, when your daily life may mean that you're not designing for other people, it does have a different connotation and meaning. Yeah, absolutely.
But even there, if you're a designer, if you're a lead designer, if people depend on you, even there, changing perspectives, like we just heard by Radha, and having that vulnerability in mind is important, because sometimes people do not know it all.
No,
and if
never.
Exactly. But if they pretend to know it all, there's a big pitfall if you start believing in that myth.
Yeah, and that is what I found so challenging in taking the role of curating an embassy of inclusive society. Like, who knows what includes inclusivity, and who can argue that they can lead that role? And therefore, vulnerability and admitting that you don't know half of what you're talking about is really important.
I will never admit that.
Well, I have.
No, just joking, of course. We've come to almost to the end of the conversation. Is there anything you would like to give as a thought or as an idea to the people creating Designing Cities for All?
Well, I'm burning to speak because I think this topic is super interesting, and I think we see vulnerability very differently when you realize that we are all interdependent, and I'm dependent on everybody else, and I'm depending on people who are stronger than me or more vulnerable than me, and actually vulnerability comes a lot from who defines who is weak and strong, and I think we have to take that power back.
Take that power back, yeah. Thank you so much. Is there anything that is a message that you would like to give the future fellows or the team working on Designing Cities for All for the next 2 years?
Well, I think there's a lot of beautiful work done for me as a person who's interested in Designing Cities for All. I would say what you actually discussed earlier with Romy. So these systems, we're all talking about changing systems and society. How? We can talk about it, but you say, does it make any profits? How do we make sure that it's embedded throughout all levels of the society? I think that's very interesting to see some real practice.
Put it into practice. Yeah. Less talk, more doing.
Yes.
Thank you so much. Radha, is there anything that you would like to give as a message or an idea or as a concept to the future fellows or people working on the program?
Well, I think the question of cities is a very, very major, almost an existential question of our times. And I really don't know if we can say enough about cities or come to a point where we say, okay, we've said everything we need to say about cities. So I think there is a lot of work to be done. There is a lot more conversations needed, especially in the global south, where cities and urbanization and housing rights and all those kind of issues are an ongoing and expanding problem. And I think there is really a lot of scope for expanding this project.
Great. Thank you so much. Anna, same question for you.
Yes. So I think two things, and I'll touch upon shortly. One is, I think within this program, my focus shifted very much from cities to neighborhoods. I think cities are a way too big a scale to be talking about the human experience and the human and behavior and community. And I think that is what a lot of this conversation is about. So I would love to see the focus shift more towards neighborhoods, and how are we designing these neighborhoods and communities, and how can we optimize them for well-being, for taking care of us and community. I think that would be my tip. Yeah. And then something else is, I think what is an interesting tension in the program and also in any conversation on inclusivity is that it becomes very much about the question, are we allowed to have power? Is power even something that can still be in the room? And I think that is also risky, because then you can also almost start to reject power or lay it off or pretend that you don't have it, even if you do have it. And I think the future for designers is very much to also to incorporate power. In any system there's powers, and incorporate it in your role, and have it be something that you can also pass on and that you can distribute, but at least make it part of the conversation, make it explicit, and try not to become so inclusive that this is not something that we can talk about anymore.
That's a very interesting point. Be aware of the power that you have, be aware of the privilege that you have, and try to pass it on as well.
Yeah, because
I think we could fill a whole program with that.
Well, it says everyone is a designer, and I think that is true, but some people are a little bit more designers than other people.
Yeah.
And I think we have to admit that.
Thank you so much, Anna. Shai, your takeaway, your advice, message for the team or fellows?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Maybe I would be really interested in having the process more transparent, because like there's quite amazing research work done here by the program team, how they've always they bring these different people together and the themes, and I guess it would be really valuable to see a bit more of the process that goes beyond behind the scenes, and even more the space for the program makers and to see their own positionality in it. I guess I'd be really curious how the network that goes behind having these programs on a monthly basis. It's
great,
quite something. Yeah.
Great. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
A warm hand for everybody here at the table. I would like to invite Romy back to the standing table, because she's going to divulge what we can expect in the next 2 years. What can we expect? What themes can we expect? And what will we be talking about? Romy, please enlighten us.
Yes. I don't know if this is on.
This is on. We can hear you.
Thank you. First of all, thank you all so much for giving us all these tips and reflections. It's really nice to hear, and kind of like an outer body experience in a way, to hear people talk about the thing that you think about every day from their perspective and reflect on it. So thank you for that. And Ving, actually the thing that you said about putting it into practice is something that hopefully will also come back more, and also the neighborhood focus. So we're going to do Designing Cities for All again, but we're going to call it Designing Cities for All Regeneration, with a little stripe between, or a little, what do you call that? Streepje.
Hyphen.
Between, hyphen, wow. Hyphen between re and generation, because it's about regenerative design, which I'm going to explain you what it is in a second. And the new generation, because we're all, responsible for what we're going to design in the future. We're going to look into the topic of regenerative design. And regenerative design, I'm going to read you a definition that I find so apt, because it has everything in it. Regenerative design is designing products, services, systems, and processes that lead to ecological and social recovery and that keep the systems healthy. So we discussed nature inclusion or interbeing design earlier, and that's something that we really want to take into account more in the next few years. So it's not just about the social aspect, it's also about the ecological aspect. There is no boundary between the human and nature, so we shouldn't act as if it is there. So instead of looking at who is excluded in design, we're going to look at who is excluded and what is excluded in design. And we're going to be working with fellows again. We're going to, instead of making 3 programs with a fellow, we're going to make 5 or 6 with one fellow, so we can really take a deep dive into a topic. And the first one is going to be Sarah Ichioka. She is a urbanist from Singapore, which is also a bit difficult because there's a lot of time difference between here and there. So we're going to have to find new ways of making programs with her, because if we do it at 8 at night, it's 3 in the morning there, and that's not good for our work with her. She wrote a really interesting book on regenerative design together with architect Michael Paulin. So she's going to lay the foundation from January to March of regenerative design. What is it? What are these processes? How do they work? And that's also a solutions-based way of looking at things being. So that's a process that you can go through to actually find answers. So we really hope to get that in the next few years. And yeah, some of the other themes are going to be cooperatives and commons. We're going to look at degrowth. We are going to look at climate just design a little bit more. And we're also going to go, because you said something about neighborhoods, Anna. So one of the things that we really learned in the last 2 years is that we shouldn't always expect people to just come to us. We should also go to people more, which means that we're going to do a university tour, first of all. So we're going to go to 6 universities in the next 2 years and talk to students about what they need, what they think, what they want to learn, about what we found. And we're going to do excursions as well to regenerative practices in neighborhoods that are putting this into practice, and learn from them as well. We're going to take some people with us there, and we really hope to be able to find a connection not only in this house but also at other people's and other organizations' places. Yeah.
This sounds great and very impressive.
Thank
and sounds like a lot of work.
Yeah, there's going to be another essay book as well each year, and there's going to be new design principles as well each year, and there's going to be a lot more. So it's a lot, but it's good.
You will be occupied for the next couple of years. Thank you so much. Romy, please give her a hand. As Romy mentioned, we will be collaborating with universities more next year. And one of the activities will be a research program with Artes, in which we will dive deeper into some of the design principles that have also been mentioned in this book. This will be organized in Newport Metropolis in New West in Amsterdam. And to give you a small teaser, Jonah de Beer will present a similar project he did last year at HEM during the Artes Summer School. There he is.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me, for inviting me. I'm really interested to read all of your essays, because a lot of what you talked about touched upon the things that we did this summer. Let me talk a little bit about myself first. I'm an independent artist, and I run my own studio called INSI Art. And I'm an self-taught artist. I never went to art school or anything, so going to the Artes and HEM summer program was the first time that I ever did anything in the direction of an art education. And I didn't really know what to expect, but what I liked most about this program is, is that we weren't treated as students. We all got the opportunity to invest in the education that we got, to invest in the program, and to sort of give shape to whatever we wanted the program to be. Also, a big part of what we did was discovering. We took a closer look at Chapter 5, which was the current exhibition at HEM at the moment, and we had to give our take at what we thought was missing, what could be complementary to what was already there, but also to what the general feeling of HEM was. And we started by going deeper into a sense of collectiveness, because we were all individual artists and we've never met. We came from different disciplines. Some people weren't even, strictly speaking, artists, but were in-house architects or came from a curational background. And the first thing we did was discover. We went into the environment of HEM and searched for materials that we were instructed to use to create a collaborative art piece. And while we were making this art piece, we found 2 snails going between all of our materials. And we also found shrooms. So we came to the conclusion that our collective should be called Snails and Shrooms, which was sort of a wink towards the chapter, because we all felt a sense of dread. We were all part of a generation that's faced with existential threats, with constant pressure, like you said, and also isolation. And what we learned from the snail was that the snail takes its time. It goes just the way it wants to go. It takes its own path. And while going very slowly, certain obstacles are already removed along the road. So what we took from that is that we should take things slowly, and rather than go for the immediate solution or a quick fix or go for literally the nuclear option sometimes, we should just take a breath and observe what is happening around us. And the shroom was inspiring because we learned that most mushrooms are species that are able to adapt to almost any environment, and therefore they survive through their adaptability. After this discovery phase, we came to the research part where we were confronted with all these different speakers and workshops that took us outside of the buildings of the HEM, because Artes believes that art education doesn't belong between four walls. It belongs in the world. You need to be in the world, interacting with people, interacting with the things that are actually happening, rather than learning about them. And what we did was sort of dive into not only the chapter at het HEM, but also go on a field trip to Zandvoort and IJmuiden to see Tata Steel in the distance, to take a walk, to ponder our personal connection to the countryside, which was the topic of that chapter. And the countryside was something so daunting to, like, as a topic to each and every one of us, because we didn't really know what the countryside was. It was something that was opposed to urban life. It's something that's outside of ourselves, so we thought of it as an othering term rather than something that's included or even on the same footing as urban areas. And to me personally, it became clear that I had completely lost touch to where I grew up, because I actually grew up in the countryside, but it just didn't feel like that. And by sort of reflecting on the fact that it was an othering term, we came to the realization of some of the points that you already said, that we need to sort of close the gap between ourselves and nature, and that by even thinking in terms of people and nature, we're already not thinking in inclusive terms. So after we were sort of confronted with all these knowledge, all this knowledge and research, we had to pick our own research topics. We had to pick whatever we wanted to do as an art piece, and all of us did we did things that were so different from one another, and still were part of one, big whole. So we came to the name Asterisk, because it was chapter 5 with an asterisk, because we wanted to add to what was already existing. And what happened was that one of us started to do an investigation into languages that were nearly extinct. So she was researching very local patterns of speech, of knowledge, of means of communication, and how these were lost through migrations or through the passage of time. Someone else looked at the surroundings of Tata Steel, because Tata Steel is being closed down, and she was looking at how nature is sort of reclaiming that area, and how new species are actually thriving there now that humans don't come there anymore. Another person from our group, she looked at tractors, which was a really nice coincidence, because it was also at the moment of all the farming protests, but she was not really interested in the political part, but more interested in the fascination of all these young farmers and their interest for the machine. Another person was interested in dreams and how the subconscious may help us heal and face issues such as climate change and a possible mass extinction event. And myself, I was interested in how we can communicate to a future that we might be doing things now that are complementary to the demise of our planet. So I was looking into nuclear energy and how we are processing its waste and using the countryside essentially as a waste management place rather than something that exists in itself. And together with the 5 of us, we came with an exhibition. We also wrote papers that we're still working on. We have to reflect on them and do a peer review, but we're thinking of bringing them out as well. And what this whole experience with Artes and at Ham brought me was that I gained a sense of community. I became an artist that was connected to other artists that inspire me now, that I can fall back on. And also that helped me realize that being an artist is not locking yourself up into a studio or working in a museum or just hanging up your pieces somewhere and letting people come visit you to look at those works. It's also interacting with people. It's being part of the community and being part of a solution that can help the entire world. These were pictures from our exhibition. The bottom two are mine, but I think this was most of my story. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Jona. Thanks for the presentation, very inspiring. Like I mentioned at the beginning of the program, you are able to get involved in with questions as well. So if you send your questions to mentor.com, they will appear here on my iPad. Is there anybody here in the room that has a question to any of our panelists? Please raise your hand if so. Yeah, there in the back there. Just a moment until the microphone comes to you.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. That was amazing. Question, and I want to vibe off you, Jona, real quick. Because you mentioned slowness. And I am inclined to believe that slowness is inherently anti-capitalist and also inherently anti-colonial and could be incorporated into like decolonial practices, because I feel like with this separation and the invention of race and this epoch of coloniality we live in, modernity makes us operate quickly. And I know that there's a sense of urgency with decolonial practices that we're talking about tonight. However, how do you factor in slowness as a practice, or is it something that you've considered?
Very good question.
Is it for me, right? Okay, well, this is what I always ask: who brings their phone to the toilet? There, you can be honest. I do it. Sorry. Yes. So when are you actually off? Who brings the phone to the bedroom, for example? I think the only place where we go where we are not on is probably the shower. Mm. And we all know, if you take a step back, we all know the solutions of what we need to do, right? We all know that we can feel ourselves again, ground a little bit, and then move forward. But we don't take that time anymore, I would say. And think about it for yourself. So when do you take time for yourself and really turn yourself off? And I would say use that time when you're in the restroom, because that's very efficient. Of course, you can meditate, but I think... yeah, it's you don't have to do like, I've done the meditation in the beginning, I was burning out and all that, but it takes up my whole schedule and then have to plan around it. But it's these little things, just do one thing at a time. Like when you eat, I do it sometimes too, and then I watch a series. But if you eat, just eat. When you drink, just drink. When you talk to someone, don't look at your phone. Those little things, I think you can take it slow. And also, don't be afraid sometimes when you're in a conversation or when you're with someone or when you're waiting for the bus, just be quiet.
So there is a possibility of slowness even in this capitalist situation or a capitalist environment, society, in order to inject slowness into each other's lives.
So, just a last thing. So what I say, if you're in a capitalist society, a working environment, everything has to be fast-paced and all those things, right? I think someone gave me a tip and it really helped me a lot. If you build on a relationship, everything will go faster. The content will go faster, anything. Remember when you are in a better relationship with your colleague, a better relationship with anyone else, at your home, your friends and anything, everything goes faster then. So take that time to really invest in each other and take the time to talk to each other and ask the real questions, as in simple. How are you feeling today? Not how are you? Everybody say, yeah, I'm good, I'm fine. But really, how are you feeling today? And take that time to listen, to reflect, and then move on to business.
Thanks. There's a reaction you would like to give?
Yeah, I was just thinking that what you're mentioning is more like on an individual level, indeed, like the slowness of us all. And sitting here listening to also Romy's presentation, thinking back at the Dutch Design Week and being a part of that vehicle now, I'm wondering, what does it mean to be slow as an institution, as an organization? Like producing, I mean, the work that is done here is amazing. We're producing a book a year, producing big expos where everything goes fast, vastly big programs with big publics. Like, how do we practice some of these principles also as organizations and institutions that send out a certain message, that we are also having like majorly high output and tempo and fast-paced program. So I don't know. I'm wondering, what is the space for slowness in the program of designing cities for all, and the same for my own practice. Like,
that's a very interesting question and something to think about as well. Radha, can I switch to you as well to reflect on slowness within a capitalist society, or the society that we live in? Is that really possible, or is it only limited to some injections of working or thinking or being a little bit more disconnected and therefore being slow? What's your perception on that?
Well, I think there are two things that we need to consider. One is that the reason why we feel so stressed is not only because pace or speed, it's because somebody else is setting the speed for us. Somebody else is determining how much I should do, how fast I should work. I'm not making those decisions. I open my laptop, I'm flooded with emails. I have to deal with them. Therefore, the stress. So it's not coming from within me. If I'm able to set my own pace, maybe I'll do more. Who knows? But we don't set our own pace. This is first thing. The second thing is also, we don't have any time for us, for the self, for listening to our inner voice, and for actually, that inner reflection. And because of that, and we don't have that because somehow living in a capitalist society gives you very certain, definite conceptions of what is productive time and unproductive time. So if you're chit-chatting with your colleague, or you're just going out for a movie with your colleague, that will be like your work time is being destroyed. But maybe that is when the most productive work happens. Because as we know, there's a lot of creativity in these unscheduled, unaccounted for times that we spend with each other. And increasingly, because of the metrics which appear even in organizations that are doing voluntary work or good work or whatever, that the metrics drive everything that needs to be done. So some funder gives you money, you have to finish doing that at a certain time, there are deadlines, and this thing goes on. And I don't think we have really tried to understand the source of creativity and how to release it, because we are fearful that the external pressures will, kind of stop us from, or it might not work, and therefore we will fail in whatever we are supposed to do. So it's quite a complex question, actually.
It is a complex question, but it's something that we can reflect on, and actually should take more time to reflect on as well. There was another question there in the audience, if I'm correct on that side. Maybe you can wait until the microphone is there. Yeah, great. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you so much for this. I might want to pass because it was very similar to the last question. Yeah, it was more about the mentioning at the beginning that each of the contributors had reflected or made a link to decolonial practice or a process of decolonisation. So I just wanted to listen to more reflection on that, more practice on that.
On decolonization.
Yeah, in design practice. Yeah.
Is there anybody who can reflect on that more, Anna?
Yeah, well, like I said, I think actually it was something that was pointed out to me by a designer from Chicago. I forgot his name, but he used to work at IDEO, and now he founded a design studio that works just for governmental practices. He is a black man himself, and he wrote an essay on design and power. And I think at least I can speak for my own education. I've had a design education, and the idea and the concept of power was never really taught or discussed in my education. But like I said, what I really liked in this program is that it's being made explicit. But I think we really have to embrace it as part of being a designer and not try to design it away. I think we have to acknowledge it and also therefore be able to pass it on, to distribute it, to facilitate, to look at yourself as a facilitator when you are in a certain position, for example. I think in essence designers are facilitators. Through whatever we design, through the processes, but this glass facilitates me drinking water, and so everything I design facilitates something. And distributing power, I think, is also a very important topic within our profession.
Yes, thank you so much. Any final questions? Yeah, right there in the front.
It was discussed that difference is very important. How, as a designer, can you find those differences? How can you open yourself up to different opinions? Could you maybe? I think it's a very big question, but
Shy.
Yeah, I think it's a really not small, but it's something that you can. I guess you can start by asking yourself, how many close friends do I have that are very different than me, in the way they look, in the way they think, and where they come from, and if the answer is few, then you can say, okay, where can I meet people who are very different than me? And then just opening up this book or looking at chapters, there are so many initiatives in the Netherlands that bring people together from different cultures and create spaces for belongings. But you have to initiate going to these places, breaking your routine, not meeting friends that you know since 20 years, but actually meeting people that are beyond your bubble. And that is so simple, but also so hard, because it requires breaking patterns and reflecting on your own positionality and realizing, oh, I live in a friends group where everyone is exactly like me. But the spaces to break that are in almost each city in the Netherlands. There are great initiatives. So I think it's just a matter of being kind of proactive and making this step.
Proactive in breaking those systems or algorithms almost. Anna?
Yeah, I really liked what you said earlier on education and learning in school how to mourn. I think we are living in this weird time where we are not qualified to live in the environment that we created, right? Our brains are not optimized for all of the things that we created. So we have to go, well, maybe indeed in school we have to be taught how to hack ourselves in order to stay sane in the world that we are living in today, and then maybe through that also recreate it, change it, because all these things that were mentioned are we have to kind of go against our first impulses, and really make an effort in designing our lives.
Yeah. That's an interesting thought. It's an interesting thought to hack ourselves in that sense. And, well, I wonder, do we have to hack ourselves in adapting to the situation that we live in? Or should we see it as a more, because that's my takeaway of this evening, see it as a more holistic system that we have to change and a holistic attitude that we have to change in order to adapt the system to our needs.
Hacking should be the temporary solution, right? I mean, the sadness that you have to come up with a rule for yourself to not take your phone to the bathroom because then that will, somehow make you happier. Then that's really working hard to fight the environment that we have created. And I think the goal should be to create an environment that takes better care of us. Yeah. That doesn't require this muscle that we have to train to stay sane and healthy, but that the environment, and I hope that's also part of the focus of the next program, that the environment is also, lifting us up, helping us and bringing us forward.
I do have a question then. So,
but time is running out.
No, okay, very quick. But I know the whole default environment there. Basically, the default, with computer updates, you want the default to be good for us instead of thinking, oh, I have to customize my settings. But but who do we trust in designing that? That's the question, I think, very important.
Yeah.
Let's try to answer that question somewhere in the next 2 years. Because we're going to this final part of this evening, and we would like to move from our minds a bit more into our emotions and our bodies, and we will see a performance of Alexander Kromer. Alexander is a PhD candidate at the PhD Arts at Leiden University. He operates in the intersection of spoken word, speculative fiction, and performance art. Alexander's research critically centers matters of voice, its construction, and its perception, as Alexander begins to question how voice contributes to the construction of decolonial, racially imaginative spaces of resistance. Please give a warm hand to Alexander.
Thank you. Can I have this mic? Is it nice? Thank you so much. The cold night. Oh shit, that's nice. I didn't plan that, but it's wonderful. I'm gonna keep it. Oh, nice. Okay. The cold night, supreme chrysalis. Dark skies and still clouds spit on us, silencing our cores, and those saline tears that rain down our backs leave ignotible handprints from the phantoms and specters of loves that we used to have. It's gone now. That's nice. The moon don't shine here no more. Only a buzzing streetlight, a synthetic canopy that stretches outwards like how hands do when swimming across the waves of her body. The arch of her spinal, the arc of her navel, and the cold concrete, a nervous system awash with the deferred dreams of those that tried before. And this super information highway alive with these rubber tires of cars that go zoom, like zoom, like zoom, rerouting the folly of man from one hole to another hole, to a dark pit. And then there's a clock that keeps spitting, trimming away the seconds, yours and mine. Its black hands running infinitely towards its own demise because its cousin non-linear is here to claim his prize, keeping black bodies not dead, not alive, but in stasis, caught in a place in between the in-between and being chased by monsters the color of the sky, that stalk, that fire with chins held high, something like the sun, blast off rocket from the bedchamber to the heart of man. And all the rest with breasts rotting like melons in a heat wave hold their phones out and record as his heartbeats come swaying out of his chest. Like one, like two, like three. The waltz of the son of Icarus, like one, like two, like three. His heartbeats you see, like one, like two, like three. Too afraid of the sun now. Like her, like him, like me. And when he finally dies, they were pretty as eyes, for it showed the globe to let the whole world know that, despite his demise, the heart of man ain't worth shit. Thank you. All right. So check it out, right? I'm going to do one more short thing. And then, speaking of vulnerability, I'm going to allow myself to be extremely vulnerable for you because I'm going to do like an experiment that I've only done once before, and it may or may not work. So I'm going to prompt you now to use your imagination to make it better for me in case it doesn't work. And the funny thing about imagination is I feel like imagination is what has got us here in the first place, if we consider that like our whole world is kind of built on the imagination of like white male Europeans. So it's not too far out of the question that you can change my performance by just thinking that it's better. So this piece, you know what, no intros, I'm just going to go into it. Speaking through my ancestors which channel themselves through me. And who are you now? This voice that becomes mine. The world that your tongues create with me, these realities will form with each word. We sit and we weave together. Your hand over mine, the skin on your fingertips, incredibly worn, rough, calloused from folding and unfolding the fabrics of space-time that we move through. Let me see your hands. Let me see the fingertips that which were dyed with time. Speaking through these ancestors, you channel yourself through me. You say hello to the past that used to be there while I speak to the ghosts of you that still linger in the shadow of your once presence. The power of it all. Those specters that express themselves through the wind, speaking in tongues that I forgot how to listen to, that I forgot how to understand. This is yours as much as it is mine. Can I truly say that we are doing fine? Let me see your fingertips that which were dyed with time. Thank you. It's okay. Yeah, so I definitely am really interested in matters of voice. As our gracious host mentioned before, thank you very much for that introduction. So I started experimenting with ways of playing and layering my voice, and also like deconstructing it and exploding it. So thank you for allowing me to experiment with you tonight. And like I said, just imagine that it's better if it's not good. Okay. The world is a sea of darkness when there ain't no sun. Not one yet, I know. God faces it. Not one yet, I know. God faces it. The world is a sea of darkness. When there ain't no God faces it. The world is a sea of darkness. Is a sea of darkness. When there God faces it. Ain't no sun. The world is a sea of darkness. Is a sea of darkness. When there ain't no sun. The world is a sea of darkness. When there ain't no sun. The world is a sea of darkness. When there ain't no sun. The world is a sea of darkness. When there ain't no sun. The world is a sea of darkness. When there ain't no sun. The world is a sea of darkness. When there ain't no sun. God faces it. The world is a sea of darkness. When there ain't no sun. God faces it. The world is a sea of darkness. When there ain't no
is a sea of darkness.
'Cause
when there ain't no sun.
'Cause the tides are coming through, and those sirens look for me and you. From atop their chariots they wail, dragging us underneath the knee of a riptide that takes us to the vagueness of our own demise. And can't you hear them? Can't you hear them crying into the pale glow of a moon that shines 'cause reflection? It lights the way so my ancestors could take flight out of their plight. Plantations glow red hot underneath stars that align and lead my people to a freedom that ain't never been free. You and me, riding these wax wings we stole from Daedalus so we could finally see the sun which dyed our skins. The same sun that melts our rides, and we plummet to the passage deep within. Now the earth is too far gone now, I know. And I know this because when I dream of dark reaches that exceed even the blackest celestials. And because ice don't freeze, their voices pirouette to the surface like water do when it turns into ice. And they tell me that the sky's a sea of darkness within which we all be. So America, where leaders trade lies for lead and gunpowder. America, where leaders of us disperse into deep streams of systemic sludge. America, a question for you. If your hatred for us and triggers can take us away, then at least let us trade in these waxed wings for a rocket so we can blast off and find another place to live. The final frontier, just make sure Jordy and Cisco are there and we can depart to boldly go where we ain't never been. A place where the memories I forgot and the souls that got lost can flow freely in the sea of darkness, where there ain't no sun. Ra is there, though. The world is a sea of darkness, and in that darkness I can hide from your guns. The world is a sea of darkness, and in that darkness I can hide from your gun.
The world is a sea of darkness when there ain't no is a sea of darkness. Thank you.
Wow, thank you so much, Alexander Kromer. That was impressive.
My pleasure.
Great. Well, and with this performance, we have come to the end of this celebratory program in which we celebrated 2 years of designing cities for all. There are 2 more years coming up, so there's much more to discuss, much more to discover, and much more to see, and much more to feel, of course. My takeaway from tonight is that there's always a balance between the individual and the collective, and that you as a collective always should reconsider systems that we work in and redesign systems in order to fit people as best as possible. And you always have to take your own lack of knowledge into account as well. What else did I take away? It is possible to hack yourself to fit the system, but that is only a temporary solution because the system eventually should fit the people. Those are my takeaways. Thank you so much for the guests. Thank you so much for joining here at the table, online as well. To join into the conversation. Hopefully, we'll see you again in the next 2 years as well. So you won't get rid of us yet. So be aware of that. Thank you also to the Creative Industries Fund, the Netherlands, and everybody that gave shape to designing cities for all for the past years. And as you know, the programs of Pakhuis de Zwijger are free of charge, but there's always a possibility to make a donation. So in a moment, there will be a QR code in your screen, and then if you scan that, you can make a donation that will benefit the programs directly. I think we'll get drunk here just to celebrate this enjoyable evening. Thank you so much for watching this, and see you next time. Bye-bye.